Hi, this is Michael Cohen, Dallas elder law and estate planning attorney, and I'm joined by my friend, longtime co-host on radio show, Don Crawford Jr. Thank you for joining us. We're doing these now on YouTube, which we hope that you'll enjoy. We hadn't done this before, so if there's some errors, please forgive us. Today's topic is on Ozzy Osbourne, who died this summer. And the question is, was his estate planning good or not good, and how can we deal with that? Now, I should mention that, first of all, he was a dual citizen of both Great Britain and the United States. Although he died in England, he was from Birmingham, England. That's where he had his last concert just a couple weeks before he died. As many know, he had a group called Black Sabbath many years ago. Well, I guess it continued until he died, but the band started sometime I think in the 70s, but I'm not sure the exact date. And so it became a very big group, heavy metal group that was very well known. And so then I thought, well, gee, since he passed, what would have been the proper estate planning? Now, the laws of Great Britain are different than they are in the United States. So I can only talk a little bit about the U.S. And some of these things are maybe a little bit more for an intellectual property attorney, because when intellectual property is dealing with trademarks and copyrights and NIL, name, image, and likeness, although on some of our radio shows in the past, we talked about name, image, and likeness as well. Remember on the Michael Jackson, when they were trying to settle his estate, there was a dispute on what the value was on the name, image, and likeness. So it becomes a very valuable thing. And so there's different rules on copyrights, and we have our U.S. laws, and then there's trademarks and NIL. And so what is the best method if you were in the United States? Well, interestingly enough, we'll first talk about copyrights. Copyrights, you register a copyright. So let's say you wrote a song. There might be different things along with the sound. There's recordings, etc. And then there's also the question of who owns that copyright. Sometimes if you work for somebody else, so if you work for a recording label, and then you may have given that copyright rights to the company who did the sound recording, and there's different parts of the copyright. It's interesting. Well, you could register that with the U.S. Copyright Office. Interestingly enough, the laws changed in 1978, where in 1978, so part of his music, I believe, was prior to 78, and sometimes it was afterwards. So after 1978, there's what's called a right of termination for copyrights. Right of termination gives the author, whether it be a book or music in this case, the right to terminate after 35 years, right to terminate. This is only available to the person who wrote, or the spouse, or the heirs of that person. Well, if you give it to some trust, you have lost that right of termination. What's the idea? A lot of times people are young artists, they can't afford stuff, and then they give away their rights. And so this way you can get some of the fruits of your labor from earlier years by getting this right of termination. So on this right of termination, if you want the right of termination, you can't put it in a trust. Unusual. You would have to have it otherwise. And there's actually, even after death, anyway, there's different things you could do with the copyright. So what can you do after death? Like Ray Charles made a mistake. He had it in his will that said it goes to his charitable foundation. Well, it had to go to the spouse or heirs because the way he had done things. Actually, there could have been a language with the copyright where it kind of terminated, and then it could go by his will, so it could go the way he wanted. But he apparently made a mistake in his planning. So when it comes to copyrights, it's better, if you want that right of termination, to go by a will. Whereas if you had let's say a trademark, let's say the name uh, Black Sabbath, which he and one of the other members of the group, uh, Tommy, and I'll mispronounce the name, IOMMI or something like that, were the ones who jointly owned the trademark to the term Black Sabbath, which, by the way, comes from originally was from a old Boris Karloff movie called Black Sabbath. If those who don't know, I'm sure there most people probably don't know who Boris Karloff was. He was kind of like Dracula, I think, had some of the horror films. And so this was more one of those macabre type films that he may have had. So basically, they came up with that term and they trademarked it. And so then there's licensing with trademarks. And when you have licensing or even his name, image, and likeness, so his name, image, and likeness, his voice, his what he looks like. Maybe you could have trademarks on T-shirts. And his wife Sharon said, "I am not going to have somebody else be making money off his image by selling T-shirts." So Sharon Osbourne said that. That's all we really know, at least at this time of this recording, because but we know that she has done something to protect the family on the name, image, and likeness. Well, when you have that, a lot of times there's these professional groups who know how to do all the licensing and do the marketing. So a lot of times, and you want privacy. So generally, a trust might be better in circumstances like that as opposed to a will. So it's possible that he had both a will and a trust. Now, again, this depends on the laws of wherever you reside. So British law is probably different than U.S. law, but he had dual citizenship. So did he have, we don't know, a will and trust here? Did he have a will and trust there? We don't know. A lot of times you go, if there was a will, then there's, in Texas at least, there are certain things you have to do to show that was valid in that country. And then you have what's called ancillary probate to show that it would be good here. So there's ways, our Texas Estates Code even dictates what happens when you have somebody from a different country and if they have a will. We had one, interestingly, a couple of weeks ago where the person was from Japan. And in Japan, there's what's called forced heirship, where it has to go a certain way. This percentage to the spouse, this percentage to children, parents, whatever. And it has to go that way. So a lot of times people don't even have wills in Japan. So then you have this other problem when you have property in Texas. So because if you didn't have a will, you may have to have an heirship determination in Texas, kind of like we were talking about what happens when you don't have a will. And we did a show on that pie chart on laws of intestacy. Well, you may have to prove up the heirship as to who the heirs are. So it gets even more complicated when somebody resides in another country and then has to transfer assets that are here in the United States.
I started with a company in 1989 called CBC, or Crawford Broadcasting Company. And CBC really, as time went on, started to become an acronym for case by case, because everything is case by case. You never know. There's so many variables, whether it's Ray Charles, whether it's Ozzy Osbourne, or the person listening to this podcast right now. Everything matters. So everything has to be taken into consideration. And that's why you're Machine Gun Mike, because you ask all these questions. But this sounds extra complicated, and people need to attend your workshop to ask more questions or meet with you privately, preferably the workshop on September the 13th.
Yeah. All you have to do if you want to sign up for that workshop or any other workshops thereafter, that we have them every month, at least, and sometimes twice a month. All you have to do is call 214-720-0102. That's 214-720-0102. Or sign up online at DallasElderLawyer.com. That's DallasElderLawyer.com. It's free. There's no obligation. We even give a free vision meeting, as we call it, which is an extra meeting only for those who attend the workshop. So you get 3 free hours of legal education without any cost or charge or anything, no obligation. So again, all you'd have to do is call that 214-720-0102 number or sign up online at DallasElderLawyer.com. That's DallasElderLawyer.com. One final thing, if you think this is of value, if you like these type of cast, whatever on YouTube, then all you have to do is put a little like thing on at the bottom, and so we'll know what you like and if this is the type of thing that people want to hear in the future.
Great.
Thank you, Don. I appreciate you joining me today.
Thank you for the education, Michael.
Appreciate it.